Try again. Good evening, Luke family and community guests. Thank you so much. My name is Adriana Ivory, and I have the privilege of serving as one of the leaders of the social justice ministry here at the Luke. One of the pillars at the Luke is social witness, and this ministry exists so that we can engage our members, the community, and the world through civic education, voter registration, awareness, and events like this one tonight. On behalf of our senior pastor and the entire social justice ministry, we want to thank all of you guys for coming out here tonight, and we hope that this is a wonderful evening for you. One more thing, if you can scan the QR code that will be on the screen and enter your zip code so that we can have that information to provide more events like this for you all. Thank you.
And good evening, family. I'm July McShay, and I also have the privilege of serving as a leader on the social justice ministry here at the Luke. My professional and personal passions are rooted in advocating for and educating our communities, which makes tonight so special and so important. It is our hope that each of you leave here informed and ready to vote on January 31st in this historic runoff election. As I prepare to take my seat, I'd like to acknowledge some people in the audience this evening. All current elected officials, current candidates, clergy members, and you, our community leaders, our voters. Thank you so much for coming out. And last but not least, let me introduce our visionary, the one whose passion for people creates space for moments like this. He's a pastor, theologian, community leader, and for 23 years, he has been the senior pastor of this amazing church. Please help me welcome Dr. Timothy Sloan.
Good evening and welcome. Incredibly grateful to have so many of you who are sharing with us on tonight in this most important conversation. This is critical for us because we want to make sure that we're engaged in the conversations, that we're also active and participants in the process. We want to make sure that the voice is heard in this community and that we're also continuing to inspire future generations to make sure that their voice is heard as well. We're excited tonight that this is being hosted at the Luke Church because we sit squarely in this 18th Congressional District. We're clear about the gerrymandering efforts and we recognize what is happening. But we also have a deep love and passion for this community and this city. We're grateful for the continued leadership that has been exhibited in this continued district and the strength that it's developed. Tonight, we want to say thank you to some very special partners. We're grateful for certainly our social justice ministry that has established tonight, that has led us in these efforts. But we're also grateful for Radio 1, who has come along as a partner tonight and helped to share this conversation. We're grateful to the Houston Lawyers Association and their participation in this effort. And then to the Houston Voting Initiative. Grateful to them for being a part of this effort on tonight. And to each of you, thank you for sharing. Let's begin with a prayer. Our God of creation and eternity, how grateful we are tonight, privileged that we sit in this space. We're offered this opportunity and we get a chance to be a part of this conversation. We pray for clarity and we pray for access and we pray that you continue to help us to see ourselves a part of the process. Let everything bring you honor. It is because of your love for all of us, we pray. Amen. Tonight is my privilege to introduce our moderator. How grateful we are for this voice and this individual who's brought us both laughter and information. Tonight, our moderator, DeLon Dillard. He's the co-anchor of the Houston Morning Show on Fox 26, airing weekdays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. He joined the station in December of 2023 after earning 2 Emmy Awards during his tenure as evening anchor and reporter at the WEWS in Cleveland. We're grateful because he brings incredible journalistic integrity, instinct, and heart for the community. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, please help me to welcome this proud Michigan native, Mr. DeLon Dillard.
Good evening. Well, I'm with the saints tonight, so let's just keep it cool. Praise the Lord, everybody. Truly, I do count it a privilege and an honor to be before you here today. To Pastor and Lady Sloan, God bless you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I truly count it a privilege, and God bless each and every one of you for being here tonight. I do want to run through the rules here for just a second. So here is how this program will go tonight. There will be opening statements. That will be 1 minute per candidate. Direct questions, 1 minute per candidate, including the leading responder will also have an option of a 30-second rebuttal if they do so choose. There will be follow-up questions as well. That will be 30 seconds per candidate with no rebuttals. Specific candidate questions will be 90 seconds with no rebuttals. There was a lightning round that has since been removed, and the audience, you will have the chance to applaud as long as you remain respectful. Elbow your neighbor and say, keep it cute, keep it respectful. No boos or heckling tonight, but feel free to clap if you do agree, as many of you all do right here in this sanctuary as well. So it is my honor and privilege now to introduce our candidates tonight. I want to bring to the stage first Miss Amanda Edwards, former Houston City Councilwoman. And it is also my privilege and pleasure to introduce Mr. Christian Menefee, former former Harris County attorney. All right, timing, ready? Candidates, you are ready tonight? Okay. We will begin with opening statements, and Ms. Edwards, you have the first opening statement. You have 60 seconds.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Edwards, and I'm your former at-large Houston City Council member, now running to be the next Congresswoman for the 18th Congressional District. We are in a fight of our lifetime, and never in my lifetime have I seen a president who has fought against the rule of law, healthcare, education, economic stability in the way that this president has. I'm running to be the Congresswoman so that we can create an 18th Congressional District and broader community where every single person in it has the opportunity not just to get by day to day, but to truly thrive every day. When I was growing up, my father got sick with something called multiple myeloma that took his life when I was a teen. And I learned firsthand that issues of healthcare are matters of life and death. We need folks who are going to be able to lead this community alongside the community, but also have the experience to bear to get the results our community is looking for and deserves. I will be that candidate and Congresswoman.
Mr. Menefee.
Good evening. I'm Christian Menefee, and I'm running for Congress because it was a thoughtful, it was a compassionate, it was a helpful government that gave me my fair shot at the American dream. I grew up in a family that benefited from a smart government, from the WIC program putting food in our stomachs, to free lunch at the public schools that I went to, Wunderlich and Klein Forest, right here in the 18th Congressional District, to military down payment assistance, helping my parents buy their first house when I was in high school, to me going to college and being the first in my family to graduate because of a Pell Grant, to my brother surviving cancer only because of the military health benefits that fully funded his bone marrow transplant, and he's been cancer-free for more than 20 years. That's what a smart and a helpful government can do for you. And I'm running for Congress because I want that for every single kid in our country. But I see that we have a president and a Congress that's working to tear that down right now. As a Harris County attorney, I have never been afraid to take those folks on, to advocate for our kids and our communities, and I'm going to do that every single day in Congress. I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. Christian Menefee.
Thank you. Okay, our first question tonight. The 18th Congressional District will have been vacant for 332 days on January 31st when voters decide who will be the next U.S. representative for Congressional District 18. If elected, what is the single issue you will champion in your first 100 days? Ms. Edwards, you have the first question. You have 60 seconds.
As I mentioned, When I was growing up, my father was diagnosed with multiple myeloma that took his life when I was a teen. I asked my father what would happen if his health insurance, what if they said no to the life-saving treatments that he needed? And he would just look at me and say, well, we would just have to figure something else out. I knew then, just like I know now, that was the wrong answer. And the right answer should have been that we have access to affordable care that everybody can utilize in order to achieve their opportunity to thrive. When I get to Congress, my first priority is to make sure that we are extending the health care subsidies to be available for the Affordable Care Act that is currently being used as a political chip in this game. In addition to that, we have got to restore funding to some of our most critical infrastructure investments that we need in our community so that we can keep our 18th Congressional District safe as well. It's critical that we recognize that real lives lie in a balance.
Mr. Menefee.
I remember very vividly talking to the Congresswoman, and she told me that it was nice to be on the cameras, it was nice to be in front of the bright lights, but the real work of Congress was done in the communities, getting people the resources they need every single day on the streets. So in respect to the late Congresswoman, in my first 100 days, I'm gonna be outside. We're gonna make sure that the 18th Congressional District is providing services to our residents. If you're having trouble getting your Social Security payment, come to the district office and we're gonna take care of you. If you're a veteran who has been waiting in line for months at the VA hospital just to get treatment, come to the office and we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna restore the constituent services in this office because for far too long, almost a year, people in this district have been without a member, without an office to be able to take care of their needs at a constituent level. I'm gonna make sure that my office is in the streets, where the people are, taking care of their requests as a congressperson is supposed to do.
Ms. Edwards, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal if you would like to respond.
You know, this community has gone far too long without its voice, without its vote, without anyone to advocate for the federal funding that it desperately needs. When I get to Congress, I will also focus my attention on bringing home the bacon, the resources that our community deserves. My background is in public finance, and I brought public dollars to public projects for years before joining City Council. It was on City Council that I was a part of efforts to bring home billions of dollars to our community. We need our federal leadership to be able to, on day one, bring home the bacon to this district.
Our next question tonight involves health equity. You will have 60 seconds for this question. Congressional District 18 experiences stark disparities in maternal health outcomes, chronic disease, mental health access, and environmental exposure. What federal policies will you prioritize to advance health equity in CD18? And how will you ensure community voices most affected by these disparities help shape these solutions? Mr. Menefee, we'll begin with you. You have 60 seconds.
I'm gonna do every single thing I can to address the maternal mortality crisis that we have for Black women in this country. And I experienced that in my own family. When my wife was giving birth to our youngest son, Malcolm, she had a pregnancy complication, and that meant that she was going to need to have a C-section. But when the C-section was happening, she was there on the operating table, something went wrong, and they pulled me in, and as I sat there, her blood pressure dropped to a dangerous level. And I looked in her eyes, and I saw tears coming from her eyes, because I knew that in that moment, she was asking herself, was she going to walk out of that hospital alive? Right now in this country, when a Black woman goes to give birth, she has to ask herself, is she gonna come out with an ailment that follows her for the rest of her life, or is she gonna come out at all? In Congress, I will fight as hard as I can to make sure that we have proper perinatal training so that these doctors aren't forcing Black women into getting C-sections because they don't understand our culture and our community. And I will fight to make sure that we are extending WIC and Medicaid postpartum, because right now it's only optional and the governor gets to decide, but Greg Abbott shouldn't decide if Black women survive in this country.
Ms. Edwards.
Harris County is home to the world's largest medical center. Yet and still, we're also home to the highest number of Black maternal deaths in the nation. That is unacceptable. You should not have to be a celebrity like Serena Williams in order to intervene or have your doctor take you seriously in case of any complications you have after birth. Yet and still, that is what the plight of Black women has become in our community. As a Black woman, I have experienced and know that sometimes we don't have our concerns taken as seriously as others might. And we've got to put the funding and the resources behind doing something about it. That's why when I go to Congress, I will be supporting what was sponsored by Lauren Underwood, the congressional member who sponsored the Momnibus bill, which will also provide resources to begin to reduce disparities when it comes to Black maternal mortality that we face here in our community.
Thank you. So both of you have outlined priorities, and obviously voters want just a bit more understanding on impact. What is one specific federal action or funding stream you would pursue in your first year that would measurably reduce a health disparity in the 18th district, and how would you track success? You both have 60 seconds for this question. We'll begin with you, Ms. Edwards.
One of the things that we must focus our attention on right now in terms of reducing poor health outcomes for our community is the lack of affordability of health care. Right now, as we talk about health care, we're talking about the Affordable Care Act that needs the subsidies extended, but we're also talking about things like prescription drugs. I have talked to too many people in this district, too many residents who have had to ration their prescription drug, literally take their prescription in the morning and take something over the counter at night because they cannot afford it on their fixed income. Ladies and gentlemen, that is wrong. And we cannot continue to live in a country where we treat and turn a blind eye to those who need health care most. I will also be focusing on making sure that affordable drugs are available to seniors as well as people outside that cohort. We saw the president try to reverse course on Finally, there was progress on this issue under the Biden administration with regard to prescription drug costs for seniors. We have got to take that seriously and go back in the right direction.
Mr. Menefee.
I'm going to champion universal health care. When I was growing up and my brother was battling cancer, I can remember the times of being in a hallway at a hospital and a family was having to ask themselves how they were going to pay for their baby's next chemo treatment, how they were going to ensure that their family member could get radiation. And because my parents had TRICARE insurance, this is military-issued insurance, it covered the co-pays, it covered my brother's chemo, his radiation, and ultimately the bone marrow transplant that saved his life. I believe that health care is a human right. And not a single person in this country should have to choose between putting food on the table and making sure that they get life-saving treatment. Not a single person in this country should have to choose between paying the rent and getting the medicine that's going to save their life. There are countries all across the globe that have lots of smart people that have figured out how to do universal health care, but somehow in this country we haven't been able to do it. I would argue to you that it's because these for-profit healthcare companies are racking up billions of dollars in profit on the backs of sick people. You send me to Congress, I'm going to fight back against them and push for universal healthcare.
In this changing mental health landscape, even using the phrase mental health in schools has become nearly taboo. CDC data from 2023 shows that 40% of high schoolers felt sad and hopeless, and 29% reported poor mental health, anxiety, stress, and depression. What changes do you believe are necessary to increase equitable access for children and youth to receive mental health support, care, and resources to increase positive outcomes? Mr. Menefee, we'll begin with you. You have 60 seconds.
Mental health is an incredibly important issue in our schools. And recent studies have shown that many kids are now having more issues with anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation. Why? Social media. They're going online, they're seeing everybody who they think has a better life than them, and it's impacting their mental health. And at the same time, mental health has become a dirty word in many communities and folks are not addressing it. In Congress, I will do every single thing I can to ensure that Medicaid and CHIP allows kids to get therapy, not just when the government feels like it's essential, but when there are early signs that it can be a problem for the kids later on. And I want to make sure we have federal funding in our schools to increase the number of counselors. Because how many of y'all went to a high school where there was one counselor responsible for 1,000 students? That's not how it's supposed to work. And I would increase funding for peer-to-peer support so that students can be empowered to know the signs, know the issues, and get their friends help when they need to have it.
Ms. Edwards.
Just a few years ago, I had the opportunity to advocate in Humble ISD to make sure that one of the school-based health clinics, the school-based health clinic for the district, was not going to be shut down due to politics. It was my honor to fight that fight because those children needed somebody to stand in the gap for them. There are too many of our kids who are falling victim to suicide, who are falling victim to anxiety, who are falling victim to a wide array of things that are untreated because they don't get the preventative care at the baseline level through primary care providers. I will make sure that we are providing federal support to ensure that there are more school-based health clinics there to intervene. In addition, we also need to make sure that health care coverage recognizes that mental health is health care. And instead of that being treated as some isolated or separate event, it is not. It is part of wholeness and wellness of every child.
Congressional District 18 and many others are experiencing challenges making ends meet. What is the single most effective action you believe Congress should take to reduce costs for families, and why? Ms. Edwards, we'll start with you. You have 60 seconds.
One of the things that we hear when we heard President Trump talk about when he was candidate Trump was that he wanted to lower the price of groceries and he wanted to make living more affordable. Suddenly, after he takes office, he has forgotten about the price of eggs, the price of groceries, and the day-to-day struggle that so many Americans endure. One of the key pieces of this is making sure that we are reducing inflation, and I will be behind and supportive of legislation that in fact does that. We cannot continue to have a nation where people are working several jobs and still not able to make ends meet. We have to have a nation that allows people to afford not only access to their day-to-day groceries, but housing, and health care, and other basic necessities. That is going to be crucial, and I will be supportive of measures across a broad spectrum to get that done.
Mr. Menefee.
President Trump admitted to us that his tariffs were going to make life more expensive for us. And he told Americans to just get over it. The very first thing I want to do in office is abolish the Trump tariffs. Get rid of them so that we can cut costs. But I want to be clear, the problem here is bigger than just Donald Trump. There used to be a time in this country where you could work 40 hours a week. You could get the house, the 2 cars. You could send your kids off to do better than you did. You could retire with dignity at a reasonable age, and you could even have a little money in the bank account to have a good time on a Friday night. But right now, we see that people are working multiple jobs. They're retiring much later. They're not able to send their kids off to college. And the reason is because over the past 50 years, we've helped make billionaires richer while doing virtually nothing for working people. In 2007, I was working at H-E-B pushing carts, and I was making $7.25 an hour. There are still people in this country right now making that same amount. I want to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I want down payment assistance for working people. And I want to increase the number of tax credits for working people instead of the billionaire class.
Ms. Edwards, would you like to respond to that? You have 30 seconds, if so.
No response.
This next question, Congressional District 18 is home to some of the most impacted frontline communities who are plagued with increasing cancer and asthma rates and industries whose impacts span the entire Gulf Coast. How will you foster the industries on which we rely while making sure that our communities are both heard and protected? Mr. Menefee, we'll begin with you. You have 60 seconds.
We have to be unapologetically prepared to stand up to these companies that are polluting in our communities. The most important endorsement that I got in this race was a woman by the name of LaTanya Payne. Back before there were any cameras, when nobody was running for Congress, I was sitting in her kitchen, and she was telling me about how her 15-year-old son had passed away from cancer because they lived right by creosote wood facility, and folks had been contaminated, and he passed away. She walked me down that block and pointed me to houses. She said, in that house, there were 2 people who died from cancer. In that house, there were 3 people who died from cancer. That's why I was proud to be part of the team of folks that got the EPA involved and took that away from the hands of the state of Texas, because they have done nothing for black people in those communities. But we have to be prepared to stand up and fight back against the concrete batch plants, against the metal recyclers, and against the oil and gas companies that allow this mass pollution in our communities. Donald Trump has cut the EPA budget by 50%. My number one goal is to restore that funding so that they can get their butts back in these black communities and take care of our people.
Ms. Edwards.
With roots in Fifth Ward, it is troubling to have discussions about whether or not your family's incidence of cancer may tie back to the cancer cluster. But I've lived that experience, and one of the things that is even more troubling is that in the face of obvious evidence of this, we still don't have real solutions. When people are having to be moved out of their homes and having replacement, they are still not getting equitable outcomes. We have got to make sure that not only do we hold these entities accountable for the pollution that they have created, but also that they truly do remediate these sites. We continue to have people living, drinking, and engaging in communities that are contaminated. We don't monitor them sufficiently. We don't put money into EPA and enforcement, and that is wrong. When I get to Congress, I will focus my attention on making sure that we put the resources behind the EPA so that it can finally do its job.
Mr. Menefee, you have 30 seconds if you would like to respond.
The way that you know that I'll fight back against these folks when I get in Congress, because I have done exactly that as Harris County Attorney. When Greg Abbott out in Austin allowed concrete batch plants to have quick permitting processes so that they can stand them up in our communities, I sued them and the courts forced them to change the way that they do concrete batch permitting in the state of Texas. I have gotten these facilities shut down. I have taken them to court time after time because I'm passionate about making sure that every single community has clean air and clean water. I've done it as county attorney, and I'll do exactly that in Congress.
Flooding continues to threaten homes, transportation, and economic stability in District 18. What federal programs would you prioritize to reduce flood risk in Houston, and why? Ms. Edwards, we'll start with you, 60 seconds.
8 years ago, 51 inches of rainfall hit our community. It was the second worst disaster in American history at the time, known as Harvey. I was in the houses. I was in the shelters. I was working side by side, trying to help our residents rebuild. One of the things that was most troubling was how people were being discarded. Their needs were being discarded, and they were being left behind. I had to get a New York Times article written for a resident by the name of Miss Caverna Moore so that FEMA would finally get her check. That's wrong, and it cannot be disaster recovery in our country. I will be the first person who will be advocating to fix FEMA and make sure it has resources and proper training, but also that we are bringing home the bacon, infrastructure dollars in a direct allocation so that our region can keep our families and community members safe. It does, you know, one thing that we can do, we can't stop it from raining.
Your time is up.
But what
Thank
we
you.
can do is keep it, we can't, oh, sorry.
Mr. Menefee.
There's a trauma associated with coming up in the Gulf Coast. I think about a friend of mine from college who had been dating his high school sweetheart for 5 or 6 years, and in one of our major storms, she was trapped in her car and she drowned. How many folks in our communities have a similar story? How many folks in our communities know somebody who has experienced a loss because of a storm? And when these storms come, people lose their property, their dignity, and sometimes their life. But there's another problem with this, and that is the state of Texas. Because after one of our major storms, the Houston area was slated to get at least $1 billion. But out of that total bucket of billions of dollars, Houston and Harris County got $0 from the governor of Texas. I was part of the team of folks that fought hard and got that zero bumped up to $750 million. But when I go to Congress, I'm gonna fight every single day to get FEMA restored, to make sure that money is coming directly to our communities and not having to pass through Greg Abbott in Austin, and making sure that we're prepared for the next storm and that after the storm happens, people can get back in their homes as soon as possible.
Okay, we're going to transition here for just a second. We will give the candidates 5 minutes to reset. A quick water break. If you would like to take a step off the stage for 5 minutes, you can do that as well. We'll be right back here in just 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Minister Shay Falcon. I am one of the co-leaders of the Social Justice Ministry here at the Luke Church. Very excited to be here. Social justice has been a part of my life, along with advocacy, inclusion, equity, since before I even had language for what social justice was. Being born on the same day as Martin Luther King, I like to say that it's just in my destiny. Today, I would like to recognize the Social Justice Ministry and all the volunteers, if you don't mind waving, here in the middle section. Thank everyone for all of the work that we put into this. I would also like to give a special recognition again to the Houston Voting Initiative, who is one of our partners tonight, along with the Houston Lawyers Association.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Annie Johnson Menefee. I'm the president and CEO of the Houston Voting Initiative, and I'm so pleased to see so many wonderful faces out here because one of the missions of the Houston Voting Initiative is to educate, empower, and mobilize citizens in marginalized communities of color who've been underrepresented and underserved in the political process. And as part of that, we want to ensure that people are educated, empowered, and mobilized so they can engage effectively in the political process through advocacy and voting. And that's why we're here tonight, to help educate the public. I'm proud to be a partner with the Luke, as well as the Lake Houston Civic Association, the Houston Lawyers Association, in order to bring such an important and effective program to you all tonight. And in 2 weeks, we would love to see all of you here again. Remember, early democracy is not a spectator sport where you have the luxury of sitting in this arena and watch as things unfold. But it's rather a gladiator sport where you have to get into the arena and you have to fight for the things that you believe in. So if you want equality, if you want equity, if you want justice, and you want voting rights, you have to fight for them. And going to the poll and voting in this election for CD18, as well as in the March 3rd primary, it's imperative that every voice is heard, every voice counts. So let's get out there and do what we're supposed to do. Our ancestors did not give up, did not survive the tragedies of the transatlantic voyage in order for us to stand on the sideline and do nothing. So come on, the Luke and all of the people in the greater community, let's get out there and show them who we are and what we are about. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I am Elon Moore-Jones. I am president of the Houston Lawyers Association, and it is a pleasure to see so many beautiful faces in here tonight. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about Houston Lawyers Association, because you're probably like, what? So, as president of Houston Lawyers Association, I have taken the helm of an institution here in Houston. We became into existence in 1955. We celebrated 70 years last year and are celebrating 71 years this year. Houston Lawyers Association, you can clap. The Houston Lawyers Association is the African American Bar of Houston. So what does that mean? The big bar, the Houston Bar Association, didn't allow black people, black lawyers, to become members. So out of necessity, our founders created the Houston Lawyers Association. Why are we important to today's event, you may ask? Both Amanda and Christian are members of the Houston Lawyers Association. Proud members have continued to support us, and we continue to support them. As well as the Houston Lawyers Association has 3 past presidents who have served as as representatives of CD18. That's Sheila Jackson Lee. And Erica, I see you in the audience. That Addie Bernice Johnson, Sheila Jackson Lee. Sorry, I'm thinking wrong people. Sheila Jackson Lee, Barbara Jordan, and Craig Washington. All 3 of those individuals served as past presidents of the Houston Lawyers Association, and we remain deep deeply seated in CD18. So for those reasons and many more, we are invested in this race. We are invested in the health and wellness of the Black community, the political health and wellness of the Black community in Houston that is well positioned in CD18. So the Houston Lawyers Association is here for you to serve as a conduit of redress, to assist you in anything that you may need help with. We offer expungement clinics, estate planning clinics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So reach out to the Houston Lawyers Association. We are at houstonlawyersassociation.org. If you have a question, if you're looking for a lawyer, if you're looking to get involved, you have a student or a child interested in becoming a lawyer, we offer mentorship. We offer scholarship opportunities and an amazing gala that will take place on May 2nd. So we look forward to continue to be immersed in the community and represent on behalf of Black individuals in Houston, Texas.
All right, we will bring our candidates back to the stage here now. You can give them a round of applause as they enter back to the stage. These next two questions will be directed at each of you directly, and each of you will have 90 seconds to respond to your own personal question that has been written, personalized to you. This first question, again, 90 seconds, as a response is to Ms. Edwards. On July 18th, 2019, as you were finishing your first term as an at-large city council member, being first elected in 2015, you announced your campaign for U.S. Senate. Since then, you've ran for multiple offices in 2020 U.S. Senate, in 2023 Houston Mayor, and 23-24 Congressional District 18, and again in 2025, following the death of the late Houston Mayor and Congressman Sylvester Turner, which has brought us to today. What do you say to voters who are critical of you being in these numerous races and who are concerned about your commitment to serve them as their dedicated U.S. representative? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you for the question. My commitment to serving the residents of this 18th Congressional District has remained steadfast. One of the things that I did on this journey after serving as an at-large Houston City Council member, I had the opportunity to run for mayor of Houston. When that was happening, and at that time, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee decided that she would run for mayor herself. So I decided to pivot into the 18th Congressional District race in Juneteenth of 2023. It was then that I engaged residents on federal issues like healthcare, economic opportunity, and the like, and really remained committed to serving their needs, whether I was elected or not. I had left City Council by that point and even formed a nonprofit organization to continue to serve the needs of our residents, build housing, assist our most vulnerable seniors who had been left behind after the storm. After, of course, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee decided to file for the 18th Congressional District seat and won the primary, she then unfortunately passed away. And after her passage, we had a precinct chair selection process in which Congressman Turner was selected by 4 votes. I continued to serve, and even in his untimely passing, I continued to serve this district, and I will continue to do so. Some of the folks that we herald the most in our community have been those who are unwilling to take no for an answer and who are committed to serving this community, and that's one of me. That's what I represent.
Mr. Menefee, last week your tenure as Harris County's county attorney ended. Many have been critical of your continued service as county attorney despite your campaign for Congress. You were first elected in 2020 as the Harris County attorney and re-elected in November of 2024. Just 4 months later, you announced your run for Congress following the death of former Houston Mayor and Congressman Sylvester Turner, which has brought us to today. What do you say to voters who criticize you for continuing as county attorney throughout this campaign and that are concerned about your commitment to serve them as their dedicated U.S. representative? You have 90 seconds.
I'd say you shouldn't be concerned because I did what the law required. When I announced my campaign for Congress, I resigned. And that's what the law says that you have to do. But the law also says that you have to continue doing the job. You cannot walk off on the job. You have to continue doing it until Commissioner's Court replaces you. And that's exactly what I did. I ran an office of 300 people, and over the past 12 months, we've been able to get a whole lot done for the people of Harris County. When deed fraudsters and scammers were going after elderly Black and brown people in our communities and stealing their homes out from under them, we sued them in the past 12 months and got more than 40 people their home ownership rightfully back to them. In the past 12 months, when Donald Trump tried to cut $20 million in health care programs, we sued him and every single dollar was restored. When Donald Trump laid off federal employees, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of folks across this country, I took them to court in the past 12 months, and we were able to get those layoffs delayed by a couple of months. I've been doing the job. And frankly, this is commonplace in government. It's no different than when Barack Obama or Kamala Harris ran for president of the United States and was still able to be an effective U.S. senator at the time. And that's the job of a member of Congress. You got a 2-year term. You need to be able to continue serving your district while also running for Congress at the same time. You got to be able to walk and chew gum. I've shown as the county attorney that I can do that, and I will do exactly that when I go to Congress.
These next 2 questions, you will have a 60-second response. Criminal justice reform remains a major concern for communities in CD18. If elected, what guiding principles would shape your approach to reforming the federal criminal justice system? Mr. Menefee, we'll begin with you, 60 seconds.
My guiding principle is we should be having law enforcement in a position to solve violent crimes and not in a position to harm young Black and brown boys because they are overstepping and dealing with nonviolent circumstances. Right now, there are a number of ways that we can put folks into our community who don't have weapons on them, but are trained to help people when they're going through a crisis. We can use mental health professionals to deal with mental health crises because so many of the times we've seen where young Black boys have been shot, it's been in the middle of a mental health crisis. We can have violence interrupters, who are folks who are in the community, of the community, and are trained to go in and de-escalate and ensure that there's no retaliation when there's been an issue in a community. I want federal government funding that flows to law enforcement to ensure that they're in a position to block, to protect against, and to solve violent crime like human trafficking. And I think that's the best way the federal dollar should be used. The rest of our money should be focused on nonviolent intervention that ensures that our communities are protected and not brutalized.
Ms. Edwards.
One of the things that I think is critically important is when we talk about public safety, that every single person, no matter what their socioeconomic status, no matter what part of town they live in, should be served and protected by law enforcement. Not one side of town and not the other. It has to be for everyone. One of the ways and tools that you can utilize to get that done is the community policing model. In order for you to know the difference between Miss Johnson's grandson and someone who's come to do Miss Johnson harm, you've got to be a part of that community. You've got to know the residents. You've got to show up when it's not just answering a law enforcement call. So we have to make the requisite investment in making sure we have enough properly trained law enforcement officers that help to serve our communities. In addition to that, we have to put money behind our community policing as well as our crime intervention programs. We have seen those work here in this community, and I would be putting dollars as your next Congresswoman behind those programs as well.
Thank you. Trust in democratic institutions depends on fair and accessible elections. On this past Friday, Texas sent the complete list of registered voters to the Trump administration. What specific actions would you support in Congress to protect voting access, combat voter suppression, and ensure that all eligible residents of CD18 can participate fully in the electoral process? Ms. Edwards, we'll begin with you, 60 seconds.
You know, the residents of this district have lived the nightmare, is what I'll call it, of having no voice, no vote, no representation. You know the saying, no taxation without representation? Apparently that doesn't apply in the 18th Congressional District. And unfortunately, we are seeing our rights, our civil rights, our voting rights being eroded. Pre-clearance went away. When I get to Congress, I will focus on restoring things like pre-clearance, for example, with the Voting Rights Act, John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because we have got to move in the right direction when it comes to the fundamental right to vote for our people. We know why the Trump administration, why Governor Abbott has taken the liberty to try to take our vote away, because that is going to be access to our freedom. And so I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that our voting rights are restored and that our information and privacy can be protected.
Back in the day, a group of Republicans passed a law that made it more difficult to vote in the state. They closed down polling sites. They ended precinct voting in certain places. They made it more difficult to vote by mail. And a court ruled and said that that party had, and this is a direct quote, targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision. That wasn't in the 1960s, that was in 2016. Right now in our country, you have a set of folks who are working as hard as they can to make it more difficult for people who look a certain way and think a certain way to vote. I know because I've done the work right here in Harris County. When Ken Paxton, our Attorney General, came out here and tried to get more than 2,000 legally cast ballots thrown out, I took him to court, beat him, and every single one of those votes was restored. When they came after our county clerk, Tanisha Hudspeth, a black woman who was doing fantastic at her job, I stood in defense and protection of her every single time at the county. When I get to Congress, I'm gonna fight as hard as I can to pass the Freedom to Vote Act because I believe in online voter registration. I believe it should be easy to vote by mail, and I believe access should be open for everybody.
So beyond voting, beyond supporting voting rights legislation, how would you use your role as a member of Congress to educate, engage, and mobilize voters in CD18 between election cycles? Mr. Menefee, we'll start with you. 30 seconds for this.
It's about taking no days off when it comes to getting people to turn out and vote. And that's exactly what I've done. I first got involved in politics back in 2016 because Donald Trump won the Republican primary, and I said, what is going on with this country? But since that time, every single cycle, I've done every single thing I can to help folks who see the world the same way as me get elected. From going out to Dallas and helping Jasmine Crockett campaign for her congressional race, to making sure that Dexter McCoy got elected here in Fort Bend County. It's about showing up even when you're not on the ballot. I've done that as county attorney. I'll do that in Congress.
Ms. Edwards.
We have a non-voting problem in our community. And when Karl Rove realized that the Republicans did, they brought together the evangelicals and put them together with the conservatives. Well, in our case, our non-voting problem stems from the fact that people don't believe that it makes a difference or not whether they vote. We have got to begin putting people into office who don't just make promises that they don't keep, but instead they actually make good on the promises that they make on these campaign trails. It does you no good just for us to give campaign speeches if it's not accompanied by a track record of service.
Thank you. Here's another voting question for you. If federal voting rights protections face legal or political barriers, as they have in some ways in the past, what alternative strategies would you pursue to safeguard access and participation for the 18th Congressional District and voters? Ms. Edwards, we'll begin with you.
You know, I hear people talk about how scary this moment is, and in fact, it is. And it's a moment where we haven't had a lot of power. But this is also a call to action. Back in the civil rights movement, they weren't in power at every turn. They had a legislative strategy, they had a litigation strategy, and they had an activism strategy and clarity of purpose, mission. Where are we going? We ought to embark upon that same type of journey and make sure that we are supporting organizations like the NAACP, LDF, and others that can advocate on our behalf.
If you can't get it done in Congress, then you got to get it done at the state level. Right now, all of the problems we're seeing with voting in the state of Texas is because of the same political party. It's only one political party that runs the governor's mansion, the attorney general's office, the Texas Supreme Court, the Texas House of Representatives, the Texas Senate, until we have a government in the state of Texas that is representative of the people, all the people, including the ones who are sitting in this room, we're going to continue to see those issues. I will work as hard as I can, not just as a member of Congress, but as a partner in flipping the state of Texas so that it's not all the same party running things into the ground.
Thank you. An October 2025 poll conducted by the Hobby School at the University of Houston showed that 44% of Houstonians in the 18th Congressional District's top concerns centers around civil rights and civil liberties, followed by jobs and the economy. What specifically can voters expect from you as our voice on the Hill as it relates to protecting our rights and liberties, especially during this time in our history? And what experience and abilities make you uniquely qualified to be the advocate? Mr. Menefee, we'll begin with you. This question is 90 seconds.
Right now across our country, we see that the president and the Congress that is following him on a day-to-day are violating folks' civil rights all across the country. Whether it be protesters who are just trying to stand up for black folk and find themselves getting shot with beanbag shotguns, or whether it be a woman who just last week was shot in the face by an ICE agent, murdered in cold blood for everybody to see, all because she was leaving a protesting site. As a member of Congress, I'm going to work as hard as I can to investigate this presidential administration. In 2026, Democrats will win the House back. I can guarantee you that. And when that happens, it is time for investigations. I've talked a lot on the campaign trail to people about how it's the job of a congressman to make laws. That is one part of the job. But another part of the job is the investigative powers that come from House committees. And so when it's time for the hearings to begin, I will be eager, as a former lawyer who stood up in court, who cross-examined CEOs of large companies. I don't care if you're in the governor's mansion, if you're in a corporate boardroom, if you're in the White House. If you have done wrong by my community, you're going to have to see me in those hearings. And so I look forward to standing up for the American people and holding the Trump administration accountable for how they have violated our rights.
Ms. Edwards.
Our civil rights are being violated because our congressional office and our legislative branch, our judiciary, our executive have all blended together. And now, of course, acquiescing to President Trump. We have got to separate those branches of government again, hold the executive branch accountable to the abuses of power through the forms of executive orders and otherwise. And part of doing that means standing up and making sure that we hold them into account with hearings, in addition to making sure we are passing policies that work for people. When I was on city council, I had the opportunity to work on the issue of a Black economic opportunity. And in particular, I remember us bragging about how Houston was the most diverse city in the nation. And I said, what good is it to be the most diverse if we're not solving the challenges that our diverse communities face? And so we started a task force, we got to work, and we saw disparities that were embarrassing. White-owned small businesses in our community were at $225 billion in sales and receipts. But when it came to Black-owned businesses, we were only at 3.3. And that's not because we don't have small businesses. That's not because we're not entrepreneurs. It's a lack of intentionality, and it's a lack of leadership. So when I go to Washington, DEI will not be a bad word to me. When I go to Washington, we will be putting dollars into the hands of what's known as CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions, that lend to minority businesses at much greater rates.
Thank you.
So we can have equitable outcomes as well.
We will transition now to closing remarks. Each of you will have 90 seconds for that. And Ms. Edwards, we will begin with you. 90 seconds.
As I mentioned, I was on the ground when Harvey struck, and we mobilized hundreds of volunteers. We went door to door to check on some of my most vulnerable residents who were in need. And I'll never forget when I would step foot on those doorsteps, the first thing they'd ask me is, "What are you doing here?" I explained to them, "I'm your city council member, I'm here to help." And then they'd look at me and say, "Well, wait a minute, is it time for a re-election already?" We have conditioned our community to believe that the only time that we're going to show up, The only time that we're going to know your name, the only time we're going to know your issues is when we need something from you, as opposed to just being there to do our jobs. That is representative of a democracy that isn't working well for people. And I will be the type of leader, the type of congresswoman that doesn't just show up around campaign season, but delivers the results that our community deserves and needs to see. We need to put someone in place that has a track record of delivering services, that has a track record of providing policy solutions, that has a track record of bringing home the resources that our community needs. I've built housing. I've created jobs. I have secured funding, and I will do the same as your next Congresswoman.
Mr. Menefee.
The commitment you have for me is that when I go to Congress, every single day, I'm going to fight with everything within me to protect our communities, to hold the Trump administration accountable, and to make this district one of the best places to live and raise a family in all of the state of Texas. Look, I've done the work. As county attorney, I took on fights that other folks were not trying to take on. When I was 90 days in office, we had Winter Storm Uri. People were freezing and dying in their homes, and you had companies out there that were bumping up the prices of necessities like water and food. I started a price gouging task force and went after them, and we took many of them to court. I've been engaging in the fights against the President of the United States to protect healthcare programs. I have fought the governor to protect voting rights right here in our communities. I have gone toe-to-toe with large corporations trying to get our kids hooked on vaping products, and I've stood toe-to-toe with the heads of opioid companies for the mess that they peddled in our communities. I have done the work and I have fought the fights, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in Congress. Look, people run for office for all kinds of reasons. I'm not going to Congress to go to no galas. I'm not going to hang out. I'm not going to make friends. I'm not trying to have no luncheons. I'm running for Congress because I believe in my communities. I'm running for Congress because too long have we had a president who is trying to bully black communities, brown communities, people just trying to survive in this country. So the commitment you have for me is I'm not backing down from nobody. And every single day when I'm in Washington, D.C., I will stand up for our communities and for every single person in the 18th Congressional District.
All right, put your hands together for both of our candidates tonight. And continue to clap your hands for yourself being here tonight as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being here tonight for this incredible debate. We are grateful for these two incredible leaders, and I think that this district will be in good hands. I want to take a moment to acknowledge tonight one of our former 18th Congressional District leaders, Ms. Erica Lee Carter, who is with us on tonight. Again, to each of the candidates, thank you so much for your willingness to participate, to be here tonight. To our moderator, DeLon Dillard, would you help me to celebrate him? Again, thank you to our partners, the Houston Lawyer Association, Houston Voting Initiative, and Radio 1. Praise 102.1. Is that Magic 102.1, 97.9 The Box. Thank you so much for helping to be a part of this on tonight. I want to invite you to join us again on January the 27th as well for a candidate forum. You're going to be able to hear from another 60 individuals who are going to be running for office as well. So we invite you to come back to share with us then as well. The candidates will be doing some media interviews momentarily, and then they will be accessible to you at 8:15 in the lobby. We invite you to share with them, take plenty of photos, and tell others about tonight. Thank you again.